I heard about it standing in the church parking lot, of all places, one of those conversations that starts small and ends up sitting with you for days afterward. A woman I know mentioned, almost in passing, that a pipe had burst in her house a few winters back, and she'd had to grab what she could and get out fast. She got her own things. She got her purse, her medication, her coat, and then she remembered the cat, already hiding, already sensing something was wrong, already wedged so far under the bed that it took her 20 minutes to coax him out. 20 minutes she genuinely didn't have. She told me that part, almost laughing, the way you laugh about something that wasn't funny at all in the moment. And I drove home thinking about my own dog sitting right there in the passenger seat and realizing I didn't actually have anything ready for him either. If the power goes out or you have to leave in a hurry and you're the only one in the house who can think for both of you and whoever's depending on you with 4 legs, stay with me. Because what I'm about to walk you through isn't complicated, and it isn't expensive, but it's the difference between grabbing a bag and walking out the door calmly, or standing in your kitchen at 2 in the morning trying to remember what on earth you're supposed to bring while your dog paces and your hands shake. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what belongs in that bag, in what order it matters, and the one thing almost every list like this gets completely wrong. Here's what I think most of us assume, without ever really examining it. If something happens, we'll just grab the food and go. Simple as that. Except it never actually plays out that way, and I think that's worth sitting with for a second. At 2 in the morning, with your own heart racing, trying to find a leash you haven't seen since last Tuesday, coaxing a frightened cat out from behind the water heater, remembering, too late, that the carrier is in the garage under 3 boxes of Christmas decorations. That's not a plan. That's hoping you'll improvise well under pressure, and pressure has a way of making even simple things disappear from your mind entirely, including things you've done 1,000 times before. I've noticed something interesting over the years, and it surprised me the first time I really thought it through. Most people prepare more thoroughly for their dog than their cat, and I understand why. A dog's stress is loud, obvious, visible, easy to plan around. A cat's stress is almost the opposite. A cat doesn't pace or whine or bark at the door. A cat goes quiet. A cat disappears into the smallest, darkest space it can find and simply waits there. And that quiet is exactly what makes a cat the harder one to plan for, not the easier one. If you've got a cat in the house, this next part matters even more than you might think. So before we go any further, tell me something in the comments, because I want to know what we're actually working with here. Do you have a dog, a cat, or both? Because a large dog and a cat who hides at the first raised voice need genuinely different things in that bag, and I want to make sure what I show you next actually fits the animal sitting next to you right now. Here's what actually goes in this bag, and I want to start with the item almost every list forgets entirely: a printed copy of your pet's vaccination records and basic medical history, folded and sealed inside a small plastic bag. If you ever need to board your pet somewhere on short notice, or a vet who's never met your animal needs to treat them quickly, this piece of paper matters more than almost anything else in the entire kit, and it costs you nothing but 5 minutes and a phone call to your own vet's office. Next comes food, at least 3 days worth, and I mean that as a minimum, not a maximum. Store it in a container that won't spill or burst open if the bag gets knocked over, and never loose in a plastic bag, because it spoils faster and draws insects almost immediately. If your dog or cat eats wet food, small cans with easy open lids travel far better than anything requiring a can opener you might not have on hand. Every couple of months, rotate that food into your pet's regular bowl and replace it with fresh, exactly the way you'd rotate your own stored groceries. Water is different from what you've already stored for yourself, and people get tripped up on this constantly. The rule of thumb vets use is about 1 ounce of water per pound of body weight per day. So a 20-pound dog needs about 20 ounces a day, a little over 2 cups, which comes to roughly half a gallon for 3 days. A 60-pound dog needs closer to 2/3 of a gallon just for 3 days on its own. Cats need quite a bit less, usually somewhere around 5 to 10 ounces a day depending on their size and whether they eat wet or dry food. But don't assume they'll drink from anything unfamiliar in a stressful moment. Bring a bowl they already recognize, not a brand new one from the bag. Speaking of bowls, a collapsible fabric or silicone bowl folds completely flat and takes up almost no space at all, and you can find one for under $10 at nearly any pet supply store. Bring 2, one for food and one for water, because trying to wash and reuse a single bowl in the middle of an emergency is one more thing you genuinely don't need to be managing. Now, the leash and collar. I recommend packing a spare of each, even if your dog already wears one every single day, because collars break, buckles snap, and the worst possible time to discover that is the moment you're trying to leave in a hurry. Make sure that spare collar has an updated tag, name, your phone number, nothing more complicated than that. And if your pet has a microchip, write that number down in the same bag as the medical records. For cats, a soft carrier with a zipper you've actually tested and know works is worth more than any leash you could bring. A stressed cat will find a way out of almost anything else. If your dog or cat takes any regular medication, a heart condition, a thyroid issue, anything chronic, pack at least a week's supply, keep that stock rotated and current, and write the dosage and timing on a card taped directly to the bottle. Don't trust memory in a moment of stress, especially your own, because stress affects memory in strange ways, even for people who've never forgotten a dose in their life. If that medication needs refrigeration, that's a real limitation I want to be honest about, and I'll come back to that in a moment. While we're talking about writing things down, tape a small card inside the bag with your vet's phone number, the nearest 24-hour animal hospital, and your own emergency contact. It sounds obvious sitting calmly in your kitchen right now, but obvious things have a way of simply vanishing from your mind in the middle of a real emergency, and having them written somewhere you don't have to think to find is worth far more than trusting yourself to remember perfectly on an ordinary day. Bring something familiar too, a small blanket or an old t-shirt of yours that already smells like home. It might seem like a small thing, but for a frightened animal in an unfamiliar place, that scent calms them down more than almost anything else you could bring. If you have a cat, this matters even more, because cats regulate stress largely through scent and routine, and losing both at once is genuinely hard on them. For sanitation, a small roll of waste bags, or enough litter for 2 days sealed in a bag, and a flat disposable litter tray for cats. You don't need much. This isn't about replacing your whole routine, only bridging the gap until things return to normal. Finally, a basic first aid item, gauze, a small roll of stretch bandage, and if you're in tick country, a tick remover. This doesn't replace a vet, and I won't pretend it does. It's there to stabilize a small wound or bite until you can get proper care. Now, if you've got a dog, don't overlook a carrier or crate that folds flat, even for a dog who's never been crated in his life. In a stressful evacuation, in a shelter, in the back of someone else's car, a familiar crate is the one place a scared dog will actually settle down. You don't need the biggest one on the shelf. You need one your dog can stand up and turn around in, nothing more. Because a smaller space genuinely feels safer than an open one when everything else around them has changed. Let me tell you what not to pack, because this trips people up more than you'd expect. Don't pack a full bag of toys, a heavy ceramic bowl, or a week of canned food in glass jars. The instinct is to over-prepare, and I understand it completely. I made this exact mistake myself the first time I put together Biscuit's bag. I packed an entire bag of his kibble, full size, because it felt safer somehow to bring more rather than less. It wasn't until I actually tried to carry that bag alongside my own that I realized the whole point had gotten lost. If it's too heavy to grab with one hand on your way out the door, it's not an emergency kit anymore. It's just a box of pet supplies sitting by the door, doing nothing when it matters most. If you've got more than one animal in the house, you don't need a separate bag for each of them. Food and medication stay separate and clearly labeled with each pet's name, but bowls, first aid supplies, and waste bags can be shared across the household. What matters is that anyone who grabs this bag, even a neighbor who doesn't know your pets well, can open it and immediately tell whose food is whose. I want to be honest with you about what this bag does and doesn't solve, because that honesty matters more to me than making any of this sound like a complete answer. This bag covers the first 3 days, and it covers them well. There's nothing in here I haven't tested myself, in my own kitchen, with my own dog watching me the whole time like I'd lost my mind. But it doesn't tell you what to do if you have to evacuate on foot without a car, carrying this bag the whole way. It doesn't tell you how to keep a cat calm in a carrier for 6 hours in a hot car. And it doesn't solve that refrigerated medication problem I mentioned earlier. That one takes more than a bag. It takes an actual plan. If what I just described is something you think about at night, lying there, wondering what you'd genuinely do if it happened tomorrow, you don't have to keep carrying that alone. I wrote down the full plan, the same calm way I just walked you through this one piece of it, so you have it ready before you ever actually need it. You'll find it pinned in the very first comment underneath this video. Here's what I really want you to sit with, underneath all of it. This was never really about the bag, or the bowls, or even the food. It's about being the kind of person your dog or your cat doesn't have to worry about, because you already thought of this before you needed to, before the pipe burst, before the power went out, before anyone had to spend 20 minutes pulling a frightened animal out from under a bed. Nobody's dog or cat asks to be prepared for. That part is entirely on us, the ones who love them, and it's a small enough thing to get right that there's really no good reason to leave it for the week you actually need it. If you're the kind of person who likes having things in order before you need them, you're already one of the ready ones. Subscribe if you'd like the next piece of this, and tell me down in the comments what you're checking on for your own pet after watching this. Next week, I'll show you what my own 3-day bag looks like for the humans in the house. Same principle, just different contents. And a couple of mistakes I made the first time I put mine together that I'd genuinely rather you skip. I'll see you there.